clues to the violent end of the Bismarck, and the fateful decisions that led her here lie in the mangled wreckage far below the surface. Some 60 years later, 965 kilometers off the coast of France, an international team prepares to make the first manned dives to the Bismarck.
Picture this: a warship so terrifying, so powerful, that entire nations trembled at the mention of its name. Naval historians still call the Bismarck a floating nightmare, the kind of war machine we pray never sails the seas again. It wasn't just a ship, it was a statement. Deep below the North Atlantic's icy surface, almost 5 kilometers down where sunlight has never reached, rests the iron tomb of Nazi Germany's most feared battleship. When the Bismarck finally met its end, it didn't just sink, it became folklore.
The enormous piece of hull lying far from the Bismarck is a mystery. Later it will prove to be the key to unraveling the secrets of the wreck.
A legend that gripped the world's imagination just as powerfully as the Titanic did decades before. But here's what keeps historians awake at night. How did the most heavily armored battleship ever built actually go down? When this steel giant burst onto the scene in May 1941, Hitler's Third Reich wanted everyone to know they owned the oceans. The Bismarck's short but absolutely brutal run culminated in what might be the most intense naval manhunt in recorded history. After obliterating HMS Hood, Britain's prized jewel, the Royal Navy threw everything they had at hunting this monster down. 2 days of relentless pursuit. Then, she vanished beneath the waves. For almost 50 years, the exact location remained a complete mystery. And an even bigger question haunted every naval expert. What finally brought down this seemingly indestructible fortress? The answers we've uncovered will make you question everything you thought you knew. Modern underwater drone expeditions have pulled back the curtain on one of World War II's most debated mysteries. What they found down there? Nobody saw it coming. The man who found the impossible. June 1989, the North Atlantic. A research vessel cuts through cold waters, dragging something extraordinary behind it. Robert Ballard wasn't just any oceanographer. This was the man who'd already done the impossible by finding the Titanic 4 years earlier.
The Titanic was really a cover for a highly classified military operation to investigate 2 nuclear submarines that we lost during the Cold War with all hands.
But the Bismarck, that was a different beast entirely. Ballard, working with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, had a mission that went beyond just locating a sunken ship. He needed answers. The British Admiralty had recorded approximate coordinates when the Bismarck went down on May 27, 1941, somewhere around 650 kilometers west of Brest, France. But approximate means nothing when you're searching nearly 5 kilometers of pitch-black ocean floor. It's like trying to find a specific grain of sand on a beach at midnight, blindfolded. But Ballard had a secret weapon. The technology they deployed was straight out of science fiction for that era. Leading the charge was Argo, a camera sled that represented the bleeding edge of deep-sea exploration. Think of it as an early ancestor of today's ROVs, but revolutionary for its time. High-resolution video cameras, still cameras that could capture details in near-total darkness, and lights powerful enough to pierce the abyss. The strategy? Methodical, systematic, brilliant. Tow Argo in precise grid patterns about 50 meters above the sea floor, while researchers glued themselves to monitors, watching for any sign of debris. Once they spotted something promising, they'd deploy Alvin, a 3-person submersible with a titanium pressure hull that could safely dive beyond 4,500 meters. Days turned into weeks. Monitor screens showed nothing but endless darkness and sediment. Then, on June 8, 1989, everything changed. The cameras picked up something massive, large steel debris scattered across the seabed. The team's hearts must have stopped. After exhaustive sweeps, they'd done it. located the Bismarck resting at 4,791 meters deep, positioned against the slope of an extinct underwater volcano near the southern end of the mid-Atlantic ridge. What they saw next defied all expectations. The wreck sat upright. After the absolute hell this ship endured, the bombardment, the fires, the flooding, the catastrophic descent through nearly 3 miles of water, it sat there almost peacefully. The bow pointed upslope as if the ship had simply settled, like it chose its final resting place. At over 250 meters in length, the Bismarck remained largely in one piece. The hull sat squarely on its keel, the heavily armored central citadel showing minimal deformation. Only the stern section was missing, completely torn away. Later mapping revealed this section either ripped free during the final plunge or when the massive hull slammed into the seafloor. The debris trail from that missing stern scattered hundreds of meters down the volcanic slope. When Ballard's team deployed Alvin for close-up examination, the real picture emerged, and it was disturbing. The superstructure told a story of absolute destruction. Command towers riddled with holes, upper decks torn apart, gun mounts twisted and blackened. The forward turrets bore the charred, mangled evidence of HMS Rodney and King George V's merciless bombardment.
HMS Rodney wasn't built from freedom of design, but from restriction. After the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922, battleships were capped, no more than 35,000 tons, and no guns larger than 16 inches.
Jagged openings in the main deck showed where heavy British naval shells had punched through. Fire damage everywhere. The ship looked like it had been through hell, because it had. But then came the twist that changed everything. The armored belt, that massive 320-millimeter thick wall of steel protecting the ship's vital organs, remained virtually intact. Ballard's team scoured every inch of the hull with Argo's cameras, expecting to find gaping wounds from torpedoes or massive shell penetrations. Instead, they found the armor holding strong. They counted 8 major holes above the original waterline, 1 on the starboard side, 7 on the port side. Significant? Absolutely, but not catastrophic. None of these breaches extended below the main armor belt, meaning they wouldn't have caused critical flooding to the inner citadel during the actual battle. The most shocking discovery? The thick armored plating protecting Bismarck's vital machinery and ammunition magazines showed no major penetrations, none. Think about what that means. Thousands of photos, hours of video, extensive sonar mapping, all pointing to the same impossible conclusion. The very heart of the ship, the parts that absolutely needed to flood for it to sink, appeared untouched by enemy fire. The debris field told its own story. Scattered across roughly 3 by 5 kilometers, smaller pieces, secondary armaments, and structural plating lay spread out like a museum of destruction. The volcanic seamount's gentle slope explained the upright posture. The hull didn't crash violently, but rather slid, helping preserve not just the ship's overall form, but delicate details too. Railings, deck equipment, a snapshot frozen in time. Return to the abyss. New technology, deeper questions. Ballard's discovery opened the door, but it didn't close the book. If anything, it raised more questions than it answered. June 2001. Deep Ocean Expeditions teamed up with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution for a return trip. This time, they brought modern ROVs and mini-submersibles that made the 1989 equipment look primitive by comparison. Marine experts like William N. Lang from Woods Hole observed something peculiar. Yes, the upper portions showed extensive shell damage, but the hull's sides, not nearly as many holes as expected. And below the waterline breaching that main armor belt, still nothing substantial. The 2001 survey's real contribution was detailed mapping of the entire debris field. They systematically scanned every fragment, documenting what separated during the sinking, what broke off on impact, and what tore away as the wreck slid down that volcanic slope. ROV-mounted cameras and sonar revealed large gashes in the hull, but the team's assessment: most resulted from the seafloor collision and subsequent slide, not combat damage. Then James Cameron decided to get involved. In 2002, the Titanic director brought his cinematic vision and technical expertise to Expedition Bismarck. Using Russian-built Mir submersibles, MIR-1 and MIR-2, plus advanced ROV probes, Cameron's team achieved something unprecedented. They got inside. For the first time, cameras captured the ship's interior. Compartments, passageways, the rudder structures, the command bridge, inner hull features that had been hidden in darkness for 61 years. Cameron's team made measurements that refined everything we thought we knew. Here's what blew their minds. British battleships fired approximately 719 large-caliber shells at the Bismarck during that final engagement. Out of nearly 700 shells, how many achieved full penetration through that 320mm main side belt armor? 2. Just 2 confirmed instances in the visible portions of the hull. They found long tears in the hull plating at the lower armor belt junction, but analysis showed these primarily came from seabed impact and the stress of sliding down the slope, not direct hits during combat. The interior decks had compressed 3 to 4 meters beneath the armored deck, revealing the tremendous force of sinking and impact, but not the pattern you'd expect from battle damage alone. Subsequent private expeditions brought even better tech: improved sonar, higher resolution video, more agile ROVs and AUVs that could navigate tighter spaces. Each mission added pieces to the puzzle. The evidence won't let us look away. When you combine all these expeditions, 1989, 2001, 2002, and beyond, a disturbing pattern emerges. The thick main side belt armor shows almost no complete penetrations. Apart from those 2 verified breaches Cameron's team found, the belt held. The superstructure? Absolutely devastated. Upper decks, turret tops, the bridge area, all heavily damaged with shell holes, scorch marks, and deformation everywhere. Interior compartments show clear evidence of flooding and structural collapse. The wreck's position on that extinct volcano's slope created massive forces when the ship struck bottom, causing gashes and displacement in the lower hull. The downstream slide scattered debris and warped the hull structure. So we're left with the question that's haunted historians for 80 years. Did British artillery and torpedoes sink the Bismarck? Or did the Germans deliberately scuttle their own ship? The answer is more complicated and more fascinating than anyone expected. To understand what really happened, we need to go back to the beginning. February 14th, 1939, Launch Day.
Largest battleship ever built in Germany is launched by the leader of the Third Reich and named after the founder of the Second Reich. And 35,000 tons of glistening steel for the defense of Germany. Hesitates for a couple of moments and then moves down to the water.
August 24th, 1940, Commission Day. The Bismarck entered service as one of the most formidable warships ever constructed, displacing about 41,700 metric tons with 8 15-inch main guns and armor thick enough to laugh at most weapons of the era. This ship was designed for one purpose: challenge British control of the seas. Under Captain Ernst Lindemann's command, with Admiral Gunther Lutyens leading the fleet, the Bismarck set out on Operation Rheinübung in May 1941. Accompanied by the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen, their mission was simple: wreak havoc on Allied shipping lanes in the Atlantic. May 24th, 1941. Dawn broke northwest of Iceland. The Bismarck and Prinz Eugen intercepted 2 British warships, HMS Hood and the newly commissioned HMS Prince of Wales. 5:52 a.m. The Germans opened fire at approximately 25,000 yards. What happened next took 6 minutes. At 6 a.m., Bismarck's 15-inch shells found their mark on hoods after magazines. The resulting explosion was so catastrophic that Britain's flagship, their pride and joy, broke in half and sank in minutes. Of 1,418 crew members, only 3 survived. The Prince of Wales managed to score several hits on Bismarck, damaging a forward fuel tank and reducing her top speed to around 28 knots. But mechanical failures and mounting damage forced the British ship to disengage. Victory felt complete. But Admiral Lutyens made a crucial decision: head for the French port of Saint-Nazaire for repairs. He detached Prince Eugen to raid independently while the Bismarck limped toward safety. The British weren't about to let that happen. HMS Victorious launched aircraft on the night of May 25th, scoring a single torpedo hit that caused minor damage. Through clever evasive maneuvers and radio silence, Bismarck temporarily disappeared, triggering a frantic search across the Atlantic. The relief lasted less than a day. May 26th, an RAF Coastal Command Catalina flying boat spotted the German vessel 690 nautical miles west of Brest. That evening, through heavy fire and terrible weather, swordfish biplanes from HMS Ark Royal pressed their attack. One torpedo changed everything. It jammed Bismarck's rudder at a 12-degree angle. In naval terms, this was a death sentence. Without maneuverability, the most powerful battleship in the world became a sitting duck. Throughout the night, British destroyers harassed the crippled giant with torpedoes and gunfire, preventing any possibility of repairs. May 27, 1941. Approximately 300 nautical miles west of Brest. At dawn, the executioners arrived: HMS Rodney, HMS King George V, and heavy cruisers Norfolk and Dorsetshire. 8:47 a.m., the bombardment began. Over 700 large-caliber shells, countless torpedoes, a relentless barrage that wrecked the superstructure, silenced the guns one by one, and set the ship ablaze. By late morning, the Bismarck was a drifting, burning wreck. 10:40 a.m., Dorsetshire fired 2 final torpedoes. Moments later, Bismarck rolled to port and sank stern first. Of more than 2,200 men aboard, only 114 survived. The mystery that won't die. Here's where everything gets murky. Several German survivors insisted the Bismarck was scuttled by her own crew to avoid capture. Gerhard Unack, the chief engineering officer, later claimed he ordered demolition charges set with 9-minute fuses in various compartments. The intercom system had failed, and a messenger sent to confirm the order never returned. Survivors testified that valves and watertight doors were deliberately opened to accelerate flooding after the ship had been so catastrophically damaged that continued resistance was pointless. These German accounts formed the core argument. Yes, the Bismarck sustained massive combat damage, but deliberate scuttling ensured she would sink. When Ballard discovered the wreck and saw that main armor belt virtually intact, he proposed something controversial. Battle damage alone might not have been sufficient to sink the Bismarck rapidly. Scuttling actions must have contributed materially to her demise. The hull showed no signs of implosion, something you'd absolutely expect if sudden, overwhelming flooding occurred from below the waterline. The relatively intact armor suggested controlled flooding or internal measures that allowed the ship to settle rather than catastrophically break apart. But other historians pushed back hard. David Mearns and his team's 2001 expedition found gashes in the hull they interpreted as initiated by torpedo hits, particularly in the starboard amidships region. While these holes were enlarged by the slide down the slope after settling, they remained evidence of combat damage. The rudder-disabling torpedo from those swordfish planes was the decisive event, they argued. Loss of steering rendered Bismarck unable to escape or maneuver, making the subsequent close-range fire far more lethal. Estimates suggest over 2,800 shells were fired by British ships, with more than 400 scoring hits. This combination devastated the superstructure, destroyed gun turrets, ignited uncontrollable fires, knocked out main batteries, and compromised the boiler rooms. Historians like Garsky and Dulin maintain this level of damage would have led to uncontrolled flooding, loss of buoyancy, and inevitable sinking, even without scuttling charges. After decades of debate, expeditions, and analysis, we finally have the answer. It was both. The Bismarck wasn't sunk exclusively by British weapons. It wasn't sunk exclusively by German scuttling. The truth is more nuanced and more fascinating. First, British attacks crippled the ship. The swordfish torpedoes jammed the rudders, eliminating any hope of escape. Then came the devastating shell fire from King George V and Rodney on May 27th. The cumulative damage, fires, destroyed armament, boiler failures, progressive flooding, left the ship severely wounded and essentially dead in the water. At that critical point, according to German survivor testimony, scuttling measures were initiated around 9:30 a.m. Orders attributed to Executive Officer Hans Oehls, after Captain Lindemann and Admiral Lütjens were incapacitated, called for opening watertight doors and possibly sabotaging engine room systems via valves. This action accelerated the sinking by minutes rather than hours. The Bismarck was already functionally doomed. Researchers like Ballard estimate that without scuttling, the Bismarck might have floated for several more hours, perhaps even a full day. But survival? No chance. The ship's heavy armor belt delayed catastrophic flooding, but once control was lost and internal damage mounted, sinking became inevitable. The scuttling didn't create the outcome, it just hastened what was already written. Battle damage had made the ship untenable. The German crew's final act ensured she would sink rather than be captured and paraded as a British trophy. Current historical consensus attributes the sinking to both battle damage and scuttling working in concert. The British broke the Bismarck. The Germans made sure she'd never fly an enemy flag. The legacy that lives on. The underwater drone missions to the Bismarck's final resting place haven't just solved a historical mystery, they've given us an unprecedented view into one of World War II's most dramatic chapters. That massive steel fortress sitting upright in absolute darkness, nearly 5 kilometers down, serves as a testament to both incredible engineering and the brutal reality of war. The fact that her armor largely held against such overwhelming firepower speaks to the sophistication of her design. The fact that she still sank speaks to the determination of those who hunted her. The Bismarck's story isn't just about a ship. It's about pride, strategy, desperation, and the thin line between victory and defeat. It's about men on both sides fighting for their nations, their crews, their own survival. And now, thanks to modern technology reaching depths that seemed impossible decades ago, we finally know the whole truth. The monster made of steel didn't fall to just one force. It took everything: British determination, advanced torpedoes, overwhelming firepower, and a German crew's final desperate act to bring down the legend. That wreck sitting in the cold darkness isn't just twisted metal and faded paint. It's a time capsule, a memorial, a reminder, and the mystery that kept the world guessing for 80 years, finally solved. What do you think? Does this change how you view one of history's most legendary battleships? Drop your thoughts below, and if you found this fascinating, make sure you're subscribed, because we've got more incredible stories from the depths waiting for you.